start with Dortmund, who are also in the Champions League this upcoming week. They drew 1-1 against Lille in the first leg. It was really a tale of, I thought, two halves for Dortmund in the Champions League first leg, where I thought, okay, first half they were fantastic, second half they were terrible. It was the season in a nutshell, and it's kind of was a step back to the pre-Kovac era, I thought, right, where the team played awful football. And to make things worse, they really continued those 45 minutes throughout the 90 minutes against Augsburg, Stefan. This was a performance that was very disappointing, I thought. There was not much fire, there was not much energy. One of these days, someone has to see if Jamie Gittens is okay, whether he's still around, because he was on the field, but he was not there. And same with Julian Brandt, who's also been really struggling. I assume neither one of those two players will start in the second leg against Lille. I thought they were both very disappointing. You can say the same about Jan Kutu, Benzebaini, Özcan, who got a rare start as well. I thought he was very disappointing as well. And Augsburg do what Augsburg often do. They kind of, make Dortmund stumble a little bit. And I really think, you look at this Dortmund team, I think there was an opportunity there to maybe catch up to the top four. And now I think, there was a great kicker headline is like Dortmund has to think about the day after tomorrow. I think we're getting to that stage now where they have to think about the day after tomorrow. And the day after tomorrow is obviously them missing out on the Champions League.
Yeah, I saw Emre Can after the game saying the first half was very lacking in energy. The performance was terrible. We're not a top team. We have to admit that to ourselves. I don't know if we deserve to be in the top four, not even top six. And I retweeted it with the quote saying, I'm kind of hoping Emre Can was looking in the mirror when he was making those comments, because he's surely one of the main culprits of why Dortmund haven't been in the top four, top six. Yeah, he wasn't the worst player for Dortmund in this game, to be fair. But I mean, the fact that they've got Emre Can there, and then, I mean, we talked about this after the Lille game. We obviously broke that down on our bonus show right after the game, and we talked about Niko Kovac's somewhat bizarre decision to bring Gittens and Julian Brandt back into the side, where for the last 2 or 3 games, Bayer had been working much better on the left. He'd been kind of rotating in guys like Gio Reyna and Carney, obviously, who they picked up from Chelsea on loan. And those groups of players were doing a far better job than Gittens and Julian Brandt, because it was kind of unlocking Adeyemi. He was led to kind of play off Guirassy. Guirassy was getting the kind of attention he needed, scoring goals. And it just looked like a far more balanced system. And I just don't understand how Kovac watches that Leo performance and thinks, yeah, I'm going to stick with another 90 minutes of Julian Brandt. I'm going to give Gittens another 90 minutes in the left wing, where he struggles to make a single pass to Guirassy. And on top of all that, he thinks, you know what, just for good measure, why don't we just throw Özcan in there? A guy who was atrocious for Dortmund last season, a guy who couldn't get into a Wolfsburg side that were kind of crawling at the bottom of the league table before Ralf Hasenhüttl joined and said, I don't want this guy. He's quickly turned things around at Wolfsburg, and one of the first things he did was send Özcan back to Dortmund. But, Niko Kovac turns around and says, no, this is the guy that's going to sort things out for me. And I thought he was atrocious. He was lucky that probably one of the most comical on goals of the season didn't count because it was ruled for offside, but he more or less just fired the ball into the back of his own net. And I think that summed up his time at Dortmund perfectly, to be honest. On goal after on goal. Kovac flipped over his fullbacks again. We've been talking about this. 1 week is Rierson, 1 week is Kuto, 1 week is Benzebaini, 1 week is Svensson. I don't know. It just, I guess you could argue that he had to maybe rest some players for the upcoming Lille game. But I don't think you rest. I don't think it's hard to explain. I don't really think this was him putting out players that he wouldn't play in the Lille game. No, I don't think Özcan will probably play in that game, to be fair. But it's not like he's playing Julian Brandt and Gittens because he doesn't think these guys will play in the Lille game. He's playing them because he probably thinks I have to play these guys and I have to give them another chance. Time after time, it just doesn't seem to be working for them. I watched this game, and again, Brandt was completely anonymous. He was nowhere to be found. His link-up play continues to elude him this season. He struggles to have any sort of impact on this team at all. And it just feels like from one passing week to the next, we're getting to this point where Dortmund fans are probably just thinking, I can't wait to get to the end of the season before we can sell this guy. And Gittins as well just seems to be regressing from one week to the next. I think he obviously had a really impressive kind of rich vein of form when he came into the team. He scored a few remarkable kind of long-range shots. The guy can obviously dribble past anyone, but when he comes up against a really well set up Augsburg side who were more than happy to sit deep and hit Dortmund on the counter-attack at the Westfalenstadion, Gittins is just more or less useless in those games. He doesn't really have the finesse to pick out a player in the box and provide that assist that he should be doing. He's too busy breaking. He's too busy trying to beat his defender, and then it feels at times like those crosses, those cutbacks are an afterthought once he gets that position. And you can see Guirassy just getting frustrated over and over again. You can see Adeyemi as well, who just struggled to get on the ball at all. And it's just wild how much this team has completely regressed. And I saw Kovac after the game, and I saw some quotes from him basically saying, or it was some report from an insider saying, Kovac had strong words to a lot of these players and said, they'll have to fight for their, for their positions to stay at the club next season. And I don't know. I feel like Kovac should already know, which, I mean, maybe not fully. I know he's only been in job for like 5 or 6 weeks, but he had a good thing going for like 2 or 3 games there, and then it feels like he just hit the reset button and just decided to start playing Nuri Sahin starting 11 again, and we're back to where we were before because he's gone back to these big names, the Brandts, the Gittins, guys like that, and it's showing up the exact same results. It's more or less the exact same performance you saw against Lille, and if he plays that same starting 11, they will get knocked out of the Champions League this week.
Yeah, and I mean, that would have significant repercussions, right? I mean, to stay with Gittins, he hasn't scored in, really quickly counting his 8 games in the Bundesliga. That's not a goal or an assist. So no goal contributions in 8 Bundesliga games. And that's concerning, right? I mean, even if you include the Champions League games, just looking at the stats really quick here, it's been a while there too. He hasn't scored or assisted in the Champions League since November 27th when they beat Dinamo Zagreb 3-0. They're nothing against Barcelona, nothing against Bologna, nothing against Shakhtar, nothing against Sporting in the 2 legs. And then, of course, the 66 minutes against Lille were very disappointing as well. And this is a player that Dortmund kind of were hoping for as a fallback safety valve in case they miss out on the Champions League, right? And this, I don't know who's going to pay 100 million euros for him now, let alone the 50 million euro market value that we have on Transfermarkt, right? It's a really tricky situation, right? I mean, there was some talk that Bayern Munich might wanna have him, and they do need wingers because they're going to sell a bunch or move on from a bunch. Kingsley Coman comes to mind, right? Who's probably off to Saudi this summer. But why would Bayern Munich now sign Gittins for that sort of money? It's just not realistic. FIFA has released their Club World Cup budget. It's $1 billion US of prize money. Some of the top clubs will receive around 30 million euro to start. That's also not quite the jackpot that Dortmund were hoping for. So what I'm saying here is like the big talk about them missing out on the Champions League was like, oh well, it doesn't matter, we're in a Club World Cup, we can sell Jamie Gittins for 100 million euros, and maybe not playing in a European competition for a season will actually help us in the Bundesliga. It's like some of that is kind of has to be revisited now, Stefan.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a newsletter a few months ago saying how far can Dortmund fall, and the point I made in that article was that it's hard to kind of envisage, but these things do quickly begin to kind of snowball, like, in the sense that one thing leads to another. Dortmund miss out in the Champions League 1 year, all of a sudden they have to sell 2 or 3 players to make up that budget. All of a sudden they're in contract disputes with players who are paid too much money because they were on contracts when Dortmund thought Champions League revenue was a given every year. So all of a sudden they've got 3 or 4 players who they can't really afford to pay the wages that they're paying. All of a sudden they can't sign players like they used to do. All of a sudden they're a club with older, higher paid players who don't perform well, who start tumbling down the league table. All of a sudden they can't hire the same caliber of head coaches that they used to do. All of a sudden the thought of even reaching the Europa League is a far cry. All of a sudden you're 10 games into the season, you've won 2 games and you're staring relegation in the face. Now, if that sounds like Schalke, that's because that is what happened to Schalke or to Hamburg or to Werder Bremen, and it can very easily happen to Borussia Dortmund. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this idea that Dortmund can just keep plucking these kids out of nowhere and sell them on for 100 million euros doesn't really work if the team aren't playing well. And I mean, I still want to give Gittins the benefit of the doubt. He's still a very young player, and I feel bad for the guy that he's just kind of thrown in and out of this team willy-nilly. It would seem there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's not even like Niko Kovac has a different system and he says, right, well, the weeks that we will play Gittins, we have to change things a little bit. You have to play this way. We have to just support him that way. If that's the kind of player he is, we have to shift things around to get the best out of him. It's nothing like that at all. And it just kind of feels like you're putting kind of, round square pegs in a round hole, if you will. And do you know the other thing that actually I wanted to mention before we move on to this game? The manner in which Augsburg scored their goal, which is really worth looking up if you haven't watched this game, go watch the highlights just for this goal. It was a goal from the Augsburg defender, Giva Levy. I can't even pronounce it properly. It's a truly remarkable Dutch name. Govaliv. Man, you know you spent time in Holland.
I have. Let me just look it up how it's actually spelled. He's the one.
Liuv.
He's the one with the very long name, right?
Well, yeah, either that or I'm having a stroke. Anyway, as you figure that out, I'm
Govelo.
Govelo. Yeah, exactly. That's what.
Sure, that's correct. Even I struggle with this one.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, Govelo. We'll go with Govelo. A free kick comes in from the left.
We are totally causing an international incident here.
Yeah. The free kick comes in from the left. Marius Wolf fires a cross into the back post. Govelo is completely unmarked. Big central defender. And he basically heads a looping header from the right into the left over Dortmund keeper and into the back of the net. And it's just a goal where everyone at Dortmund's looking at each other saying, who the hell's picking up the big guy at the back post? There's no marking, there's no order, there's no system in place for Dortmund to defend a set piece. Within 10 seconds, you can immediately tell Dortmund have done absolutely no training whatsoever on the training pitch for how to defend set pieces. 10 minutes into the second half, Augsburg do the exact same thing again. And the exact same player gets on the ball in the exact same location, except this time the ball doesn't go over the top of the goalkeeper, Gregor Kobel. I don't know why I forgot his name there. It doesn't go over the top of Gregor Kobel. It comes across his box, and then that's when Sally Özcan fires it into the back of the net in a stupidly terrible, haphazard attempted to clear the ball. Now, fortunately for him, it's ruled offside, but the fact that Dortmund didn't defend the set piece that they conceded a goal to, they didn't make any changes to that halftime, and they didn't learn anything from it, I think tells you everything about this Dortmund team. Either Niko Kovac's team are trying to coach this side and nothing's getting through to them, or nobody's coaching them anything and they're just kind of drifting through games from game to game. I'm suggesting it's probably closer to the former, since we're now on to our third or fourth Dortmund head coach in 5 years, and none of them seem to be able to get anything out of this side, except even Terzic in the Champions League, I suppose. But it just beggars belief. And if I was a Dortmund fan, I'd be pulling my hair out the fact that even though that goal didn't count, it's just the most worrying warning signs for Dortmund and this team. And I have to agree with Emre Can. I've said this for a while now. They're not a top six side. That squad is just not as good as most of the teams in the top six. And Augsburg, who, let's be honest, we have to give them a huge amount of credit here. A team who have been really good, recently, especially away from home. deserved all 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, Augsburg are now even on points with Dortmund, both on 35, 10th and 11th.
Flying the flag for Bavaria this weekend.
Yeah, they are. It's a shocking situation there. And the gap used to be once manageable, I think, for Dortmund, even with the entire top 4 clubs refusing to win a game this week. It's still 7 points to Frankfurt. Who are fourth, and then it is 9 points to Mainz, who now sitting third. Chasing Bayern in Leverkusen on a moped. I'm pretty sure. On an electric roller, Bo Henriksen is doing an incredible job at Mainz, and we'll probably, look. I think what we're going to do here, when we head into the international break next week, we should probably park some time and chat a bit about Mainz.
Well, they play Freiburg this weekend, so we can talk about them ahead of that.
Yeah,
so
we really
put some time towards them in the preview show,
because it is a remarkable story that is unfolding right in front of our eyes.
That's unless Leipzig sack Marco Rosa while you're in the press conference this week, which will probably take the top billing.
Yeah, I'm flying to Leipzig tomorrow. Well, I'm flying to Munich tomorrow, and I will be on the train to Leipzig on Wednesday evening. Pray for me. The Deutsche Bahn will throw everything at me.
Very optimistic.
Worst case, I'll steal my dad's car and just drive on the Autobahn, which is always reliable. This is the best piece of German engineering right there.